forum presentations this morning. Moving to item 5, deputations by appointment. We have 7 different deputations this morning. Each of those deputations has a maximum of 10 minutes, and that should include time for questions. That obviously means that managing that number of deputations will need to be quite strict this morning. There's quite a bit of time taken in our meeting. I'd like to thank in advance all of those that have taken the time and trouble to come along and make these presentations to us this morning. And I'd like to start by inviting Dr. Tracy McClellan, the MP for Banks Peninsula, to the table for the first of those 10-minute deputations. Tracy, good morning. Good to have you with us. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you, councillors. Concise, mainly because my message is quite straightforward and my contribution is very simple. You have an important decision before you today, an in-principle one, yes, but a decision nonetheless. And the decision is that the council commits to solving a problem with its organic processing plant and commit to addressing what is a long-running harm to this community. And I urge you to make that decision today. It's clear that this facility simply isn't suited to a residential area, and it isn't suited to a residential area no matter what the changes are made to its operations. So by making the right choice today, by making a decision to move the plant, the council is essentially saying that you're prepared to put yourself on a pathway not only to moving the plant, but to doing the right thing, and you're prepared to put yourself on a pathway to repairing this community and to rebuilding the trust and relationship with both the people of Bromley and the people of Woolston. And I know I've said this repeatedly, but I'm going to say it again today. When I'm out and about in Woolston and in Bromley, it comes up every time, almost without exception. Every time people talk about what the effects are about this smell. It's not just unpleasant smells. It's not just the fact that you can't have your windows open or that you can't dry your laundry and your washing on the line. It's not just about not being able to go outside and enjoy your garden. It's about feeling trapped in your own home, in the very place that you should be able to have that enjoyment and to see all your basic sort of happiness. And it's also not just about the aesthetics of smell, because as we know, bad things smell bad for a really good reason. It's a biological indicator that something's gone wrong and that there's potential danger out there in the environment. And being in the state of constant hypervigilance about noticing the smell and what you're supposed to do about it creates huge stress, and it's created huge stress in this community. Not only has it taken years and years for the community to be listened to be taken seriously, and for the council to take their responsibilities with this plant seriously, all of that stressor has resulted in a community feeling that they've been left behind, feeling that they don't matter, feeling that their concerns aren't as important as other people's concerns, and that is not good enough. The communities in my electorate deserve better. As I said, we all know, and we've spoken about this on several occasions, we know that the struggle to be heard has been much more a struggle than it ever needed to be. And this is a community that quite simply has lost trust in the council. And again, I urge you today to make the right decision, to signal that you're willing to do the right thing and help rebuild this relationship. It would be remiss of me not to mention the timeframes, and whilst I'm urging you, and I certainly hope that you're going to make the right call today and make an in-principle decision to move the plant, I'm aware of the fact that the report mentions a 3-year minimum and a 6-year maximum, and I would like to be really clear that this community expects that to be a 3-year maximum and that you are on the clock. It's going to be incredibly important to move as quickly and to move as efficiently as possible, not only because it's the right thing to do, but as a signal that you are taking this seriously and that you're going to move heaven and earth to rectify this problem in a timely manner. It would also be remiss of me not to mention the Bromley wastewater plant fire. And I mention that, although it's a completely separate issue, because we're seeing with that example an acute example of the impact that smell can have on a community on a much broader scale. And it's vitally important that the council also does everything to address the wastewater plant odours. I know that today that you'll be discussing some knotty questions about how the council can tackle this and the wastewater plant problems. And I also appreciate the fact that there's no easy answers, just like the Bromley Organics plant. I appreciate the fact that some mitigation work has happened, that you have done what you thought you needed to do to try and improve the situation. But here's a problem before us today with the organics plant that we can actually resolve whilst this wastewater situation is also in a mitigation phase. So again, it is something that I'm urging you quite sincerely to commit to. I think it's absolutely the right decision, and it is the first step of many towards rebuilding the faith and the trust that this community should be able to have in their council. I know, as I said, that the community will have you on the clock, so I'm certainly hoping that it happens at a timely suggestion. And that is it, really. I don't need to take my full 10 minutes. I'm happy to accept any questions and to reiterate my point that I very firmly and sincerely urge you to move this plant.
All right, thank you very much indeed. Now, Pauline, you've got a question?
Yeah, thank you very much, Tracy, for coming in. I'm just wondering that if, regarding the organics processing plant, if the council chose to close it and take the waste up to Cape Valley, the report says we could lose our waste minimisation levy from the government. It doesn't say that we would. I would say there'd be a strong risk that we would. Is there any way that you could advocate for us in that regard, that perhaps we might not lose that?
It's a good question, and thank you. And I think, the short answer is absolutely. My understanding of that mechanism is that it's there for a really good reason, and it's there to incentivise the right choices and decisions. But in this situation, I think there's a strong case for advocacy that the right decision here is to protect the community. So I'm sure that there is certainly worth having the conversations, potentially official on official, but I'm happy to be involved in terms of looking at what sort of flexibility exists there.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yanni.
Yeah, thank you for your deputation and your concern. And I just also want to acknowledge your predecessor. I know the former MP for the area, Ruth Dyson, also spent a lot of effort raising the concern with us. I just wanted to check what the best way was for council to work with central government over the solutions, noting that central government is currently consulting on a recycling strategy, and also that may have an impact on this, and also that government has made funding available for COVID-19 response infrastructure that generates employment, and also that you do have special consenting pathways that you can look at. So what would be the best option for us as a council, hearing the concerns that you've raised as local MP, to try and work collaboratively with central government to try and achieve better timeframes for the relocation of the plant?
Thank you for the question, Yanni. And I think the most salient point there is about that fast-tracking consent process, because that's within everybody's best interest. And obviously it's a process with public parameters. If the council puts forward a bid that clearly lines up with those parameters, and I would encourage you to absolutely do that, then there's no reason why the government wouldn't take it very seriously. Essentially, the ball's in your court. You know what those public parameters are. Putting forward an ambitious, well thought out bid that absolutely lines up with those parameters is all we would ask that you do to be able to take that seriously. In terms of funding, I don't want to obviously make any comment that puts me in trouble with the Minister of Finance, but it would be incumbent on this council to explore all those options, and there are several options. And it's about, potentially even partnering with other agencies, like certainly the other Canterbury territorial authorities or regional regional councils as well. If the council has a serious bid for support from to central government, then there's no reason that we all couldn't get together to make sure that we absolutely put our best foot forward in that regard. I think this is a really good example of what those funding signals are absolutely there to signal about. So,
thank you. All right, thank you very much, Tracy. Thank you very much indeed for coming along to speak to us this morning. Thanks very much for your time. Thank you. So I would now call the next deputation, Michael Williams, if you'd like to come forward, please. Thank you for joining us. And you have 10 minutes. If you wanted to include time for questions, that would be within the 10 minutes allotted. Thank you.
Good morning. My name is Michael Williams. I'm a retired locomotive engineer and also a relatively new resident of Bromley. I've been living in Bromley now for approximately 18 months. So I sort of bring a reasonably fresh set of eyes and sense of smell. I don't have the technical detail that my colleagues who have fought this issue for now close to 10, 11, 12 years. It's been on their agenda, sucking up their spare time and dictating their lives. Now, I can't believe it, 18 months, and we're back doing exactly the same thing. Everybody around the council and ECAN understands the issues. They know what the hell's going wrong out there. They know where the odour's coming from. They know what the solutions are. But anyway, I've sat down and tried to come up with a fresh approach and perhaps try to understand a little bit of the psychology behind why our elected representatives, the council, and our regulatory body, ECAN, haven't taken action and shut this plant down, or at least moved out all the rubbish that actually stinks and send it out to Cape Valley. Anyway, I'll get on with it. The organics composting plant must be relocated. We all understand that the current location is a mistake. Composting at an industrial scale, combined with its location in the direction of a prevailing wind, will continue to impact adversely on the residents of Bromley. Can't get away from it. It's sitting there, the wind's coming across it, we just live a few streets over and we get it. It dictates your life. It dictates when you can have a barbecue. Friends don't want to come over. You ring them up. You want to come for a barbecue? Oh, mate, no, not really. It stinks over there. And it's a shocking indictment that we still have to put up with this. The odour issue has now been understood for what is safe to say years. Organic processing plants' non-compliance with their resource consent and the indifference shown by ECAN to multiple clear breaches must stand as a benchmark case in regulatory failure. Why the situation has been continued to allow for so long? I'd like to digress a little bit here. At the last deputation, during questions, I was asked a question, and the question actually, it was from a councillor, and it actually floored me. The councillor said to me, Michael, if you knew there was an odour problem in that area, why did you move into it? I mean, it was so inappropriate, and it was such a dumb-ass question, I couldn't believe it. I mean, there's 100 reasons why you'd move. None of them were his business or the business of the councillors were here. But what it did was, it made me reflect on how he had a mindset that the stench problem was sort of our problem, not an industrial problem. And what I wrote down here is, what I now believe is that this question goes to the heart of a problem which has been for many years the total indifference by a majority of our elected councillors in ECAN. Since moving into Bromley, I've been subjected to what appears to be an industrialised form of snobbery, where we in Bromley are treated as second-class citizens, not deemed worthy of the investment that would enable us to partake of what the citizens of Christchurch take for granted, which is pretty simple: the right to breathe air uncontaminated by this pollution plague. As in many forms of institutionalised behaviour, this is often subtle and not always a conscious behaviour. How else can we explain the tolerance for this ongoing issue? So we all understand we have institutionalised racism, we have institutionalised sexuality, where people are subjected to, people of different sexualities are subjected to institutionalised behaviours. And a lot of the time, people aren't even aware of this bias. So I go on now to say, so what's in a name? The very name of Bromley is synonymous with sewage. All too often, the Christchurch water treatment plant, and Tracy here tripped, Bromley water treatment plant, What other suburb is known by its association to a sewage treatment station and an organics processing plant? It's actually the Christchurch water treatment plant. It's actually the organics processing plant, privately owned. It's not the Bromley. It's not our plant. It's not our suburbs plant. It's in our area for sure, but it's not our plant. And I think what that sets up is a mindset around people that Bromley, an immediate association with sewage. So this, I believe, has created this inbuilt bias, resulting in a level of indifference that would not be accepted anywhere else in our city. Just take what I'd ask the councillors, that representatives here, just to take a minute and think, have I been guilty of subconsciously being influenced by the long-standing association of Bromley as the sewage suburb of Christchurch? Would I, as an elected representative, have tolerated this anywhere else in the city? Has my role in ECAN been affected by this bias? How else can we even begin to explain this total indifference over many years to the stench from the OPP operation? So today we're making this decision that will affect the residents of Bromley in so many ways. Please take into consideration that it's very easy to be influenced by subconscious biases. In this case, the name of our suburb, Bromley. It's amazing how quickly things can change. I see now that the council has accepted in principle that OPP needs to be relocated. But in yesterday's press, the timeline gave a possible frame of 6 years. I was down getting a coffee and I saw the press. I don't buy the paper, I just look it up online. But I brought this one because this is a landmark. It's a landmark in the fact that finally there's been some acceptance of the problem. It's a landmark, and that this is going to take 6 years to fix. You've got to be kidding. Absolutely kidding. I couldn't believe it. We've been putting up with this now for over 12 years, and now this is the headline? Great stuff. This now leads us to what steps can be taken to continue the work that has already been done to mitigate the odours and ensure OPP operation meets its resource consents and operates as a good neighbour. Absolutely critical. Two very important things here. Meets its resource consents and operates as a good neighbour. There has been an improvement, I've got to admit it, but it's very difficult to actually sit down and differentiate what odours coming from where at the moment. We're being blasted by odours from the water treatment plant, and there's still some residual odour from the organics processing plant. One step that could be taken, in my view, is, and we've talked about this before, but it's been always put down to money, is the removal of all food waste from the OPP operation. This would, in my view, significantly assist with the outcome in mitigating the odours while hopefully the plant's relocated and rebuilt. While food waste being placed in the red bin would come at a cost, this would go a long way in reducing odour from the plant. With a possible timeline of 6 years, continued action is required now. The residents of Bromley have the right that ECAN and the Christchurch City Council will work together to take all possible steps to ensure that our quality of life does not continue to be impacted by the OPP plant. I mean, yep, we've got principle, it needs to be moved. Well, I think that's pretty much agreed on, and I'm certainly hoping the council will do that. But in the meantime, we've got to look at what mitigation steps we can put in, and we do need to put some continue with strong mitigation steps. 6 years, I would consider that a total fail. 3 years would be an absolute maximum time that would be accepted to me. And look, I appreciate the opportunity to come along and be able to talk today. And I very much appreciate the moment of silence. I was a health and safety rep on rail for 2 decades. I understand the dangers of the rail and the port industry. I think we need to acknowledge the loss of life down at the port, an absolute tragedy. City Council is part owners of the port company. So, I mean, it must be very close to your hearts that we've had a loss of life down there. Once again, you know, here we are 18 months, and I just hope we can get this sorted out, people. You know, we need to move on from this issue. My colleagues here, these guys, they're retired. They spend their spare time drawing up speeches, reports, reviews, looking at documentation, trying to work for the community to solve this issue. And I admire them for it. But they're done. They've had a guts full of it. They're actually burnt out from it. Vicky, she's burnt out from it. I mean, I actually struggled after 18 months to get up and, you know, prepare something, try and find a different angle. But I would think this subconscious bias, it does concern me that institutionalised bias the name of Bromley being associated with the sewage works perhaps has influenced the continuation of this problem. Any questions? More than happy to have a go.
Thank you very much indeed for taking the time to come along this morning. There's time for just one really quick question, if there is one? Tim.
Thank you very much. In your opinion, if you look at Bromley and you move that plant around Bromley, you've got some amazing assets close to the estuary. You've got the ponds, the wildlife, etc. What would you think would be quite a good thing to put in its place?
There. Well,
park or what? I mean, it's
originally I understand it was drainage board land, and it was given for free to the city council so they could build this processing plant.
Yeah.
I mean,
well, looking in the future,
what could we put there for the
community? What for the city? What are your thoughts? Maybe think about that.
Well, just leave it.
Yeah.
We could return it to. One of the things I want to see is the greenification, if that's a word, of our area.
Right.
You know, the Brighton area, we've got the Christchurch cycleway, which is an absolute shambles. We've got all these areas of empty land now, and I want to see a lot of it returned back to nature.
Sure.
You know, I'd like to see, not everybody agrees, but cycleways, just trail cycleways and different things set up.
All right, Michael, thanks very much indeed for the deputation, for the time spent coming to talk to us this morning. We appreciate your heartfelt comments and the remarks that you've made. Thanks very much indeed. So the next deputation is from Nicole Marshall. Nicole, I'd invite you to the table. So recognising your role as an Environment Canterbury councillor, but also recognising that you're making this deputation to us this morning as an individual, as a member of the community. Thank you.
Thank you, Andrew. So just before I begin my deputation, just reiterating what Andrew said, I am making this deputation under my own steam. It is expressly my own viewpoint. I will not be commenting or responding to questions on other elected members, staff or operations of Environment Canterbury, and I'm not going to be commenting on any individuals from the community. But I also want to give my apologies to the community that I can't stay for this meeting. We are in the middle of our annual plan hearings. I need to get back to them. So this deputation is on agenda item 22, organics processing options. Until the 1940s, the Bromley area was largely peri-urban. Some residential areas, the cemetery, but mainly farmland. Through the 1950s and 60s, Bromley became increasingly urban. In the 1960s, both the settling ponds and the Bromley industrial area began developing. From the 1970s, there was rapid expansion and subsequent infilling of both the Bromley urban and industrial areas to where we are today. Why have I started with this timeline? To make it clear to you, as our elected representatives, that Bromley isn't a case of reverse sensitivities to existing activities. Residential occupation of Bromley predates industrial activity. 25 November 2020 and 9 December 2020, your Three Waters Infrastructure and Environment Committee considered a paper, Organics Processing Plant Development Options. You had the option of moving the organic plant. You had deputations from the Bromley community and held a community meeting where residents begged you to close the organics plant. You chose to redevelop the site. 25 March 2021, you approved budget to redevelop the site, with market research confirming the budget was appropriate for the redevelopment option. 9 September 2021, 6 months later, your council halted the redevelopment process as apparently your market couldn't deliver to your budget. Instead, you were to receive a report back by March 2022 with options for building a new organics processing facility and upgrading the existing organics processing plant. It is now 2 days until May. It is now 16 months and 3 weeks since you decided not to move the organics plant. Since you decided it was better to save some money by going with the cheaper option than to save a community by permanently closing and moving the plant. This may not have been the logic behind your decision, but this is the reality for the Bromley community who continue to suffer from your facility. As a council, you are responsible for delivering the four well-beings: social, economic, environment, and cultural. You are failing to deliver social well-being for the Bromley community. There have been countless news articles in the last years, as recently as yesterday, detailing high instances of respiratory illness and severe respiratory illness in Bromley, disproportionate to other communities adjacent to industrial areas. The difference? The concentration of your waste facilities in Bromley, facilities the community has been complaining about for decades. In Bromley, we have people who cannot stand to live in their own homes because the smell invades their homes and plagues their lives. A putrid smell that they have endured constantly for years. Pensioners cannot open their windows on a hot day to enjoy a breeze or turn on their air conditioner because that invites in the smell. Kids can't play outside because the smell makes them sick. As we've heard from Michael, families can't have visitors or won't have visitors because people are embarrassed about the circumstances in which they're forced to live and endure. People flee their homes because the smell is so bad. People can't move away because who would buy their homes? So that brings me to my next point. You are not delivering economic well-being. Certainly not for the Bromley community, as their house prices are suppressed because of conditions created by your facilities. I believe council is also failing to deliver economic well-being for Christchurch as a whole. You are spending millions of ratepayer dollars every year on a facility that is poisoning a community. Is this a financially prudent decision? Is this a financially moral decision? Is this something that ratepayers understand is happening and agree is a good thing for you to spend their rates on? As a ratepayer, I say no. Bromley is a community that has suffered for over a decade because of your facilities. How long the Bromley community has suffered and how deeply it has suffered, and the way the Bromley community has been treated by your council has created an environment of massive distrust. Repeated failed interventions by your council to fix the issues at the organics processing plant means our community does not have any trust or faith that any action you take to fix, remediate or replace part or all of the organics processing plant will fix the situation. The Bromley community has been let down by you too many times. This council is a bad neighbour and the community wants you gone. And this brings me back to today's agenda item, organics processing options. I am pleased to see Officer Recommendation 1 that the Council agree in principle the relocation of the organics processing facility to an alternative site. I thank Council staff for making this recommendation. I do request Council amend the recommendation to remove in principle. You have repeatedly failed to deliver in practice for this community. An in principle decision is worth less than this piece of paper. Paragraph 1.2 on page 5 of today's supplementary agenda shows one resolution of 8 that were made on the future of organic waste processing in Christchurch at the 9 September 2021 council meeting. The more important resolution missing in today's council paper is resolution 4A. Request staff report back to the council by March 2022 with options for building a new organics processing facility and upgrading the existing organic processing plant. I fail to see how this recommendation is materially different from today's Officer Recommendation 2A. Request staff approach the market for options for locations, partnerships, joint ventures, commercial opportunities. In September, you promised you would decide on a new facility in March. It is now April, and you are still not deciding on a new facility. In fact, Staff Recommendation 2B would have you take 10 more months until February 2023 to come up with options to consider. This will make it 26 months since you first decided not to close or relocate the organics plant. And in the meantime, you would continue to poison a community, as per Recommendation 3. Your city was expecting you to decide on the future of organics processing and the health of the Bromley community last month. You have repeatedly shown inability to meet your own timeframes, budgets, or expectations. You have failed to improve your facility so that it does not make a community sick. You are not fulfilling your duties under the Local Government Act to promote wellbeing. I request that you replace Recommendation 3 with a resolution to immediately cease operations at Metro Place. It is unconscionable to continue to spend ratepayer money to make people sick. Almost 17 months ago, you decided it was okay to make a community sick for the sake of saving money. Today, you can make things right. Today, you must resolve to immediately close your organics facility in Bromley. You must resolve to remediate your site as soon as possible so it no longer emits smell beyond the boundary. And then you can take 10 months to come up with an alternative. Why would you vote to prolong suffering when you can end it today? Please do the right thing.
Any questions? Yanni.
Thank you for your deputation, and I appreciate what you said at the start. I just wonder if you've made a similar deputation to Environment Canterbury as the regulator around their enforcement action.
Yeah, constantly.
And what has their response been?
It's been inadequate for what I want, for what we all need to see. And I'm still pushing on that. I know this isn't just on you, it's on us too. And I'm doing my bit. I want you guys to do your bit too.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further questions? Nicole, thank you very much indeed for the time taken this morning. Good to see you. Thank you. So I would now call Bruce King to the table to make his deputation. Bruce, thank you for joining us.
Good morning. It is a very disappointing person that's turning up today in front of this council. 18 months ago we came here and we thought we had some reprieve to the situation that's been going on personally for at least 13 plus years, and I am bitterly disappointed when I read the paper yesterday another 6 years to get rid of this crappy stink out of our area. I'm here to talk about the OPP, the Organics Processing Plant, or as I call it, the odour producing plant. Same initials, just a different effects on what happens. I have lived in Bromley for over 20 years. I would like to give you a brief overview of the history of the life in the wind shadow of the composting plant over the past 14 years. During those years, the odours started soon after the opening of the OPP in the late 2008. Prior to this, the site was used for composting of true green garden waste, and there was no offensive odours emitted from the operation. I have been reporting excessive odour emissions on a regular basis since the decision was made to add residential, commercial and industrial food waste to the green composting operation. Originally, the complaints were made to the CCC, and when that brought no change, I complained to ECAN. The only time complaints had any effect was after the OPP started composting Bowron tannery waste. At that time, I was advised by an ECAN inspector to do a local leaflet drop, which I did. ECAN received 63 complaints the night of the leaflet drop. The smell was absolutely putrid. The OPP was given 14 days to remove the offending material. This happened, and the waste and smell it created was moved to Bottle Lake initially. The plant then returned to emitting its normal repugnant odour. After this breach, the CCC installed air scrubbers to help control the odour, and much later purchased an electronic odour sensors to determine the source. This expenditure has proved to be a waste of ratepayers' money in an effort to eliminate the odour that supposedly did not exist. As a result of the change of the consent to the resource consent, a community liaison group was set up. This group meeting was intended to be a place where residents or business owners could ask questions and hear their concerns regarding the continual breaching of the resource consent. The CCC and Living Earth staff were then required to report back to the next community group meeting detailing what action had been taken to address the members' issues. However, there was never any recognition of the residents' concerns regarding the offensive odour or excessive dust. All requests for remedial action were ignored. These meetings became a source of extreme frustration for residents, and many felt it was a waste of time and pulled out. However, my feeling was that if I did not attend these meetings, it would be considered that there was no problem and nothing would ever change. It's just like's happened now. Nothing has changed. In fact, what did happen was the CCC staff, representatives and Living Earth management continued for years to deny deny that the plant produced any offensive odour, and instead directed blame to other industries in the area. Even as recent as 2020, a CCC employee was reported in a press article as saying there was no offensive odours coming from Living Earth. We were continually banging our heads against a brick wall. Finally, our elected ECAN councillors listen to the residents and, of course, experience the putrid smells for themselves. A thorough investigation into the industrial odours in Bromley was organised, and the OPP came out the worst offender. The CCC was consequently given 1 year to operate within the conditions outlined in the resource consent. Hundreds of thousands of ratepayer dollars have been spent by the CCC in an effort to delay the inevitable and continue the OPP's operation at its present site. Now another year has gone by and we're still suffering from vile odour, black dust, pathogens, bioaerosols and possible Legionnaire's disease. With the relocation of the maturing compost to the sides of the oxidation plants, the CCC is exposing more people to the odours and dust. This is evident by many comments on social media. Closure of the OPP on its present site is the only acceptable option now after failure to comply with the resource consent by the 31st of January 2020. The day after the resource consent, ECAN's timeline expired, there were ECAN inspectors around and they could smell the vile odour that was coming from the plant on the 1st of February. At present, there is all the main maturing compost is moved from the plant, but there is still a few hundred tonnes of tailings, which is the coarse compost, which is too coarse to be put into the compost, and it goes back through and gets reprocessed. And those piles would probably be, as I say, probably 50 to 60 or 70 metres long when I was there last Tuesday or Wednesday, and they're probably 3 to 4 metres high. Now they still produce odour, and the flat tack running of the misters and everything does not cover the stink. We are, as Michael said, we are treated like second-class citizens living on the eastern side of Christchurch. And we had to remember for the people who died and injured during work processes today, how about a remembrance day for the people who have suffered for the crap from the CCC owned and Living Earth operated odour producing plant. You know, it is vile, and well, there's two things I'd like to say, is I thank the councillor, our area councillor, for his work over the years, and I thank for Pauline for listening to us in the last few months. And otherwise, I'm very bitterly disappointed by a lot of people who have been in this council for a long time, by taking the bull that's been given to you by the Three Waters and Waste that this plant does not produce any odour. Sorry, that is just BS, and it's been given to you, and we have been bullied at the CLG meetings. My wife refuses to go anymore because a certain person in the Three Waters and Waste come and stood over and spoke to her in such a terrible manner. That is the attitude we've had for the last 2013 or 14, I think the CLG meeting started, and that has been the general attitude. If we have spoken the truth, we have either been banned or we have been trespassed from the building, so we cannot attend those meetings. And I'm still waiting for my meeting to discuss my banning from the mayor promised me about 6 years ago. She's hopeless. No. She put that in a council meeting. She promised me a meeting, never eventuated. All she did was sign off a letter, exactly what I'd had from someone else in the council. So I'm bitterly disappointed with the city council, bitterly disappointed with the way they've treated the people on the eastern side of Christchurch, and bitterly disappointed with their now extra time taken to resolve this issue. I had some form of hope 18 months ago, but then again, when we came to the meeting here, you only looked at one source, and that was fixing it up, because there are ulterior motives why they wanted that site fixed, so they could put a biogas producer in there and use the pipeline that's down from the sewage farm down to this office here to run the place. And you can see the signs along the street that the gas pipe is already there. So I am bitterly disappointed that it's going to take another 3 to 6 years. When I read those headlines yesterday, I bloody cried. I'm sick of the way we are treated, and I'm sick of the way the City Council is procrastinating and believing the bull that comes from the Three Waters and Waste. Thank you for the opportunity.
Are there any questions? Tim.
Thank you very much for your presentation. If in the short term we looked at stopping domestic organics, or kitchen waste, etc., and industrial organics, like say for the likes you mentioned, barons, etc. In the short term, do you think that would help or ease the problem whilst we move forward?
No, I personally don't, because it's the way the plant has been operated and been neglected and abused. You just had to read the reports that were presented 18 months ago, the way that Living Earth had treated the internals of the place, opening and closing the doors with loaders, not putting the treating the place with respect and keeping it in a good maintenance. In their contract, once a year you have a right to get rid of that person, and not once is that part of the contract been used. I'm very disappointed again.
Thank you.
Thank
All right,
you.
look, thanks very much indeed for the time taken to come along and speak to us today. Thank you. And next I would call Geoffrey King to the table. Geoffrey, thank you for joining us, and you have 10 minutes. If you wanted to leave time for questions, that would be within the 10-minute period.
Before you start the clock, sir, I'd just like to thank Yanni Johansson, our community representative, and Alexandra David, our community board chairperson, for the time and effort. They're banging their head against the brick wall on our behalf. Good morning. I have come to stress the wrongs. There are no rights of the CCC OPP, composting operation at 40 Metro Place. Debilitating odours, the black dust, affects a quarter of the city's population. You can smell it out at Horsville. It affects our lives, lifestyles and health. It is that bad sometimes we are driven from our homes. At night, we go to New Brighton, sleep in our cars in the lay-by. During the day, we go to Sumner, Littleton, elsewhere, upwind of the composting operation. Nobody should be subjected to such living conditions, but this council allows it to happen. Operations with governance at this council is bewildering. Breaches of the law, statutes, and consents are mind-boggling. And you people sit round the table and allow it to happen. People, heads of department, don't know, or if they do know, they're being deliberately ignorant and arrogant. Point in question, 18 months ago, we had a meeting with the head of Three Waters, Helen Beaumont, and she did not know of the foundation document of the OPP, the very basic design build document, the foundation document. She hadn't read it, she knew nothing about it, and she's the head of the department. The foundation document, Simpson Grierson legal document for the design build of the operation, document 0607-192, and in particular clauses 3.9, 1, 2, 3 and 4, which state that all aspects of the composting operation to be under negative pressure, in other words, enclosed. It has never been enclosed, never ever been under negative pressure, and is still not under negative pressure, such as the callous operation structure. The OPP breaches the Resource Management Act 1991. It should never have opened in 2009, but this council appears to be above the law of the land. It also breaches the emissions law. Look up 12.3b. Methane expelled from this operation is equivalent to a herd of 4,000 dairy cows. And yet we have Green supporting councillors, not looking at anyone in particular, who never say a word, want to have a bob each way, so to speak, and this council, doesn't this council have a platform for climate change, yet breaching it? Hypocrisy. Thus, one must ask the question, why is the CCC above the law of this country and nothing done? Non-feasant might be an appropriate word. The following of laws and documentations of the OPP, the following of the laws and documentations of the OPP by this city is likened to an air stewardess the people that serve the drinks and the food, controlling a 747. Three Waters and Waste don't have a clue. We are now in our 14th year of this schmozzle, and we in the wind shadows have suffered more than enough, and are being subject to the behaviour from the CCC and ECAN also for that matter is beyond the pale. We have been subject to lies, deceit, deception, abuse and bullying by such incompetence so as to cover backsides. People with pretentious titles and no ability to listen and understand the problems the community face are running the Three Waters and Waste Department. Open your eyes and ears. The department has issues with rubbish collection, the OPP and now the sewerage operation. Is there anything left for them to fail? I don't think so. Unable to make a decision, this revamp, or should I say the shifting of the OPP, was mooted some 2 years ago in earnest. 1 year ago, and they still have not found a site. What have they been doing? Absolutely nothing, ensconced in this ivory tower. If me are to be believed, now, goodness, the sewerage problem has taken 6 months, and now it's another couple of months before any action starts. 6 months. And they've been running around in ever-increasing circles. It has taken 13 years to get thus far to talk about shifting the operations of the OPP. Some of you have sat round the table 3, 6, 9 years as our representatives. Yanni Johansson and Alexander from the Community Board have been beating their heads on our behalf against the brick wall. Very little support from around this table and no support from the top table, and that means the miracle from Birmingham and the Mayor. Over the past 12 months, you've had the windrows removed, but left the tailings behind. And in spite of the comment yesterday in the press page 2, there is no difference in the odour intensity for days suffered from. Even the facts of complaints as printed are deliberately misinformation. More lies, deceit and deception spread amongst the public to back the malfeasance from within. It was reported one complaint only has been made this year. I have made 67. Who is spreading the lies, deceit and the deception, the misinformation, and whose backside is being covered? Heads should roll at this Three Waters and Waste portfolio, starting at the very top. Incompetence Incorporated.
I would ask you to be respectful to our staff, please. I realise you're not identifying people by name, but
we put up with enough. Not getting any more bloody pushed down. The biofilter is third world. The offensive, debilitating odour is not treated. It is just pumped out the atmosphere through a tray on bark, with bark on it. The biofilter is a joke, but of course it's run by experts who will obviously tell you water runs uphill. When councillors visit the plant in 2015-16, the Living Earth, in conjunction with Three Waters and Waste Department, Winter and Joyce, turned off the air circulating pumps so that the foul, debilitating odour was not pumped into the surrounding air. Councillors thus stated there was no smell, that the odour must be coming from adjoining industries. Straight out lies, deceit, deception, and they are still paramount 7 years later. To date, this council has spent around $40 million with no improvement. Yes, $40 million, high figure, because of the incompetence of this council, never had it insured. We stated the time in 2013-14 from memory to shift it there and then. But no, the experts within Three Waters knew best. The council plans to spend another $21 million. This was authorised or talked about 8 months ago or 6 months ago. An expert composting organisation stated that it will cost $40 million. So that means $80 million spent, and the result will be the same. Nothing has changed. It's like winning lotto and writing a cheque. The biggest problem is the third world biofilter. So to replace that with a system that treats the odour before it's pushed into the atmosphere for all to breathe in the pathogens and bioaerosols could cost another $20 million. What? We're up around $100 million now. We have tired of the lies, the deceit, deception, abuse and bullying. Abuse where correspondence is not answered, we are left hanging. Bullying where we are trespassed so as to get our persistence out of the way. I got trespassed for asking at the kiosk down below in Hereford, 53 Hereford Street entrance, asking at the kiosk to speak with someone from Three Waters. All I said was, may I speak with Justine Moe, please? And the lady, she came back. She said to me, she's not available to speak to you. And I said, well, can I speak to her on the phone, please? No. Thursday, the next day when I was back in here, I got trespassed for asking a question. Then lied at the meeting, and they got stuck into Bruce King, and it happened ECAN to par for the course, and it's incompetence. They want us out of the way. The culture stems from the very top and is filtered down through the ranks. On the 20th of March 2020, I was at a meeting with the CEO and her male secretary, and we're explaining about the living problems within the wind shadow of the OPP.
Now that brings us to the end of the 10 minutes, if you'd like
Pardon?
to wrap up. That brings us to the end of the 10 minutes.
Well, I haven't finished.
If you'd like to wrap up,
So
please.
it took 3 months to get the appointment. She knew so. We were tolerant at the time gap. However, a month in the meeting, I have asked 7 times if I can have a meeting, do a follow-up meeting. I can produce the emails. I asked, that was from our 20th of March meeting. We still have not had the courtesy of a follow-up meeting, and one would expect in a well-run operation.
We are going to need to bring this to a
I
close.
turned this to abuse and bullying, and we have no right, and we have a right to be heard, and we have a right to be respected as the operation and ensure we have the city we live in. The operation needs to be shifted
Okay, we're going to need
well
to bring
away
this to
from
a
the
close. Everybody
residential
else has
living
taken their 2
areas.
minutes.
In the
So if I
USA,
can ask you to
some
wrap
of
up,
these
please.
composting industries need to be 8 miles from,
Okay, can
not
we-
kilometres, from the
I've
residential
asked
line.
you 3 times now to bring this to a close, and you've ignored me on 3 occasions. Can we please bring this deputation to an end? Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you.
More bullying.
Thank you very much indeed for taking the time to join us. Okay, we need to deal with this. Can I ask you, please, Mr. King, to bring this deputation to a close? The 10 minutes is up. The time has been taken. We're giving everybody a fair opportunity to contribute, and your 10 minutes has come to an end. Thank you very much indeed for taking the time to speak to us this morning. Thank you. All right, so I would now move to the next deputation. Can I call Don Gould to the table, please? Is Don here?
Abuse.
Don, good morning. Thank you. Don, thank you for joining us this morning. You also have 10 minutes to make your presentation to us. Thank you.
Morning, Andrew. Thank you for your time. Level of frustration around this one is clearly very high. I can understand the community's sentiment. I'm going to make this as quick as possible to move this on. I've got a PowerPoint presentation. Andrew, I know you love my PowerPoint presentations, so lots of lovely pictures here. I hope I drive this well. Are we going to put it on the big screen, folks, so everybody can see it? Excellent. Oh, we've got Jamie still there on the screen too. That's wonderful. Morning, Jamie. Right, so let's move on without further ado. Right, my major concern around, I'm going to address the report that's on the table today, and my major concerns around this, a lack of detail for good governance. It seems very high level. It doesn't empower the community, support the council dealing with the infrastructure disaster as well as I'd hope. We have press articles and radio interviews with very frustrated elected members, as well as a council meeting with members of the public in tears, which is partly why I've got involved. I'd like to acknowledge some of the folk in the public gallery today, Vicky Walker particularly, who has done an absolutely astounding job representing us around the country in front of the media, which I acknowledge Television New Zealand and other media companies here today as well. Members should be considering, in my view, a bigger, more dedicated team specifically on this trickle filter problem at present. We seem to, I feel like we've got a team that's got its spread across too many different problems out there in this disaster right now. Whether the staff feel that way or whether elected members feel that way, my point is simply as a member of the public, that's how I feel at present with this situation. What I am going to say next, though, is that this situation has picked up the pace. The good news, from my opinion, is this has picked up the pace. The amount of public pressure and interest and engagement has lifted. Some of what I'm going to present in the next few minutes, actually, I think is probably already out of date. I'm receiving more reports through from council staff, from elected members, literally hourly, and in the last few minutes, actually, from some members. The first thing that comes to mind for me out of 15 points is that there doesn't appear to be an environmental advisor in the management team, certainly not signatory to the paper that's on the table. The next issue is one of a cover. This has been one that's come up quite a bit. Reading the report, there seemed to be 15 different options, I think there was, in the list of things that could be done about the covering this thing. One of my concerns is, should we be covering it with urgency, giving ourselves more time to actually deal with it? The report talks about the complexities of actually dealing with the content once it is covered, or if it's covered, but in fact the community is more concerned about the impact of it as it stands right now. And if we covered up the problem, I hate the idea of sweeping something under the covers, but if we actually covered it up and contained it a bit, then we could allow ourselves more time to actually deal with the real problem that is the stench of the rotting, decaying media inside it. Again, exactly what staff are doing and exactly what hits us in the public arena as far as information, I'm sure there is a lot more detail. Elected members have gone to lengths to point out there's more detail behind the scenes that we don't know about. So again, I stress that my comments come from a sense of just what we're receiving in the public. And at present, I don't feel confident. I don't feel reassured that the right things are being done. I talk with friends and family who also agree that we don't feel like the right things are being done. So we have concerns around those issues. There are more technical things I could say, but I won't labour the point here this morning. Health concerns, health and safety of workers on that site doesn't appear to be being addressed particularly well. There are members of your own staff whose families are on social media commenting about the fact that the highlight up there on the screen at present, they're suffering from headaches when they come home from work. I've got another friend who works in the space and his wife comments that his car stinks, which means their personal assets are also being run down. Timelines and pledges. I have to commend the team who put together the Finance and Performance Committee reports. I have personally gleaned a massive amount of really good understanding from these reports, and they're very robust in a lot of their presentation. On this particular instance, I don't feel like there is enough milestones, deadlines. Deadlines, if we don't hit a deadline, folks, it just doesn't matter. We review what went wrong and we move forward and set another deadline. But at least it puts some lines in the sand. And in this instance, I don't feel like there are enough lines there. Air quality monitoring, I understand there's a team from Hamilton flying in first thing this morning to look at air quality monitoring. My friends and I have looked at air quality monitoring as well in the local community because there is concern about the level of emissions that are coming from somewhere at that plant. Some folk are going to tell me that it's not coming off the trickle filters, it's coming off the aerators that will settle down when they start to do their work properly. I acknowledge that, but right now that settling down period, even in the latest reports, tells me that it could be as late as May, June before that really starts to take effect. And in the meantime, we have real health concerns. Folks, I've got a petition or a couple of petitions out there, and I know you've all seen them, but what you might not have had a close look at is the number of health concerns. I downloaded the data that Change.org gives us the opportunity to look at. I was going to graph it, but in fact I find it too hard to look at personally. The number of dozens and dozens and dozens of people expressing my reason for endorsing this complaint today is because I'm suffering from ill health. Disinfecting it. A lot of debate. This slide is essentially about the debate. I know that some of you as elected members are just insanely frustrated at this issue. You represent constituents who are on the phone to you night after night after night, late into the night in some instances, early in the morning in other instances. So I will move on. Tank emptying. What this slide really is about is the flow of technical information. There are technical specialists in the community who have lots of knowledge around the sort of biomechanics that are happening in this facility. We're making wild speculation, wild suggestions, purely because even though we would read the reports are just not in the public domain. We've got questions, they go unanswered. I get why they're unanswered. I get the fact that you've got technical people on the ground trying to do their best to do the job today, and they don't need me in their ear every 5 minutes with another question and, oh, can you please explain to me how an entire sewage treatment plant works? Because I understand bits of it, but I don't actually understand all of it right this very second. But can you give me a couple of hours to explain it to me? Yeah. Wet filter management. One of my concerns here is that we've talked about a cover to keep the thing dry so that it doesn't rot down, so it doesn't pollute the environment around us. What we haven't talked about is the impact of that filter material being wet on the people who are actually going to do the job. Are they all going to be out there in hazmat suits and respirators? Management team, I think I've covered that, so I'll just move on. Poor comms. Guys, the comms have been amazing in some respects and shocking in other respects. Look, you could probably stand 10 council staff in front of me all day and talk about this all day, and I'd still probably grizzle and moan and whinge. You've seen me on social media. You know that I like to push these issues to get the best comms we have got. So I think we need some moderation and temper around some of that, some maturity, which is why we have you as elected officials, and you're sitting on that side of the table and I'm sitting on this side of the table. However, I am going to speak to the 3 petitions I've got out there right now.
Noting that we've got less than 1 minute left. Okay,
so we'll pick this up. The point of the petitions essentially was to gauge public opinion. Three Waters is an incredibly unpopular government policy currently, and yet we've got over 1,000 people calling on government to look at changes and intervene, and also people wanting these things covered. So those petitions are there. I'd like you to just consider them tabled. I've got a range of other points. You guys have got the PowerPoint presentation, so you can follow that up.
All right, Don, thank you very much indeed for coming along to speak to us today, for the PowerPoint and for supplying that to us. And obviously you've been giving this a lot of thought and doing quite a lot of work around it as well. So thanks very much indeed for coming along this morning. Thank you.
You're welcome.
So now we come to our final deputation of the morning, and I'd invite Vicky Walker to the table, please.
Might I ask if I can bring my neighbour with me because we are a unit?
Yes, of course. Yep, most welcome. All right, so you've got 10 minutes for the deputation, and if you wanted to allow any time for questions, that will be within the 10 minutes. Thank you very much indeed.
Okay, I'll read my bit and you can take it.
Mine's less than 2 minutes.
So, okay.
All right, thank you.
Right, oh, glasses. Thank you for receiving me today. I believe it's my human right to have fresh air to breathe. I believe it's your job to make sure you do your utmost to make sure that I do, that we do. We have battled with living with the composting plant for years now. And it's taken a toll on our lives. In essence, it's robbed us of a quality of life, of being able to enjoy our properties to their potential, our families, our homes, having to constantly dodge the smell however we can. Christchurch will always have an easterly prevailing wind, and I believe the plant should never have been built, the OPP plant, should never have been built there and so close to residential properties and needs to be moved immediately, needs to be gone yesterday. Plans should have been made already of where best it is to go and with wise choices of how to, and so never to cause this problem again anywhere else. Get it gone, I want it gone now. Just as we're battling the efforts of poor quality from the OPP plant, there comes the fire in November 21 at the wastewater sewerage plant, Christchurch wastewater sewerage plant. An accident caused by someone working on the roof, I believe. And since then, we have been existing with this disgusting, repulsive stench. The stench has caused us to suffer from sleep deprivation, interruption to sleep, being woken by the smell while sleeping, not being able to get away from feeling trapped, headaches, sore throats, coughs, asthma, nausea, not wanting to eat, feeling repulsed by the stench. Our fresh, clean clothes smell when we're out. I can't warm my dry house using my home ventilation system as it brings this repulsive air in from outside. I have to turn it off because of the stench. Our lives are being shortened physically, also with the stress of this, and mentally having to battle for our air quality exhausts me. ECAN has continued to not issue the council with any consent breaches. However, ECAN's own manager, Johannes Welsh, said it was not strictly monitoring the odour emitted from the plant. Is the Department of Health monitoring it? Monitoring and testing what's in it, what's in our air, and who's in charge of that? Where are the statistics? One of our people had some research, one of our people in our residence, and it was cause to worry that it's toxic. A month ago I met with you and I felt rubbished by a member of staff. She compared what we are smelling here in Bromley to what people have to put up with in Rotorua, I wasn't given the right of reply, but here I can. 400,000 humans' waste is not geothermal. Or show me the proof that it is. Where is the monitoring statistics? We had no problem before the fire. $6 million was spent on aerators. The huge trickling filters that were damaged are left open to the weather, to the rain, to let the rot set in. 400,000 humans' waste left rotting and causing foul, toxic stench to over 90,000 people on the east side of Christchurch. There are so many suffering from it. Jane Davis, the General Manager of Infrastructure Planning and Regulatory Services, I will quote from stuff on the 24th of April 22. During the wetting and drying process of ground rain events, the bacteria would likely recolonise and restart breaking down the material and generating odour again. We're about to have our rainy May Obviously then the options 5 and 6 of the plan need to happen yesterday. A membrane over the trickling filters needs to be erected with scaffold below, a gap between the concrete and the membrane to allow any gases to escape, strops to ensure it is secure in the wind, and just like preventing an umbrella from going inside out, an air vent at the top to cover and allow the membrane to breathe and air to pass through to keep it secure. This is in principle would allow the media within the trickle filters then to keep the stench to a minimum whilst keeping it dry and ready for removal. If not, I can predict it would hold the contractor up from moving it and making it less of a task. Ideally, get the crap moved out now or cover it. We need to be consulted and given timeframes quickly and effectively on any decision to be made. I believe Simon Macker of Senior Comms Advisor, daily contact with him needs to happen to you, and timely decisions need to be made. Whilst this happens, when making a decision, the Department of Health needs to be employed to monitor what there is and what's happening, and what choices you're making are the least harmful to our air quality, our babies, our children, our elderly, our domestic animals and our wildlife. Jane Davis, I will hold you responsible to make this happen as you are the General Manager. Lastly, I can't see in the plan anywhere that you have thought to bring in some relief to our community with this stench while it continues. All I can see is that there's intended rate rise. For what? For not being able to live comfortably in our homes, for not being able to live and our lives in our homes. Can you roll out the Red Cross or Mayoralty Fund? Perhaps. I'm having new carbon filters positioned in my HRV so I can use it at a cost to me. I'm using a dryer. And when I can't dry my clothes outside due to the stench, I'm using petrol to drive to Sumner and get away from to get some fresh air. Doctor's bills. It all has a cost, and on top of the cost, it's my health. We got through the earthquakes, we got through the massacre. We now have COVID, we've had the composting plant, and now we've got the sewage, and this is a cost to our health and our businesses. I can't work effectively and efficiently in my business, and neither can my husband. We don't get our sleep and we don't relax. There are thousands like me suffering here. I won't and can't wait for this toxic stench to be remedied. You have wasted precious time already. Nearly 6 months has passed. And this is 6 months of my life with this stench and years with the compost. I don't want to go to my grave before it's moved and fixed. I deserve my human right to fresh air. Do your job. Make our health paramount. Get on with your jobs you're paid to do and use them well and wisely. Please. Katanka.
Hi, my name is Katanka and I live in Bromley. I am severely affected by the stench from the wastewater treatment plant since the fire on the 1st of November last year. I did my due diligence before moving here in the mid-80s and I had no problem prior to this date. I don't get around that well now. I don't drive anymore. I can't just leave the area like some lucky people, if you can call them that. The stench invades everything. It gets right inside my house. I can taste it when I'm talking. It's revolting and it makes sleeping impossible. I should not have to leave my home. It's supposed to be my safe place. I suffer from sore throats, sore eyes, headaches, shortness of breath. I miss all my friends. No one wants to come here anymore. I sneeze and I cough a lot and people straight away think I'm contaminated. Yeah, I am. But it's not from COVID like they think. My power bill is going through the roof because I can't go and sit in my conservatory anymore if I'm lucky when the sun's out. It constantly reeks in there. And I don't want to hang my washing outside. It's hard enough for me to get it outside. I've got brain fog and I feel so overwhelmed with what's happening. I'm being made to go through. It's not on Christchurch City Council. Sort the shit now. Thank you for listening to me.
And thank you to both of you for coming along and making the presentation and the deputation to us this morning. We appreciate it. Thank you. Thank you very much. There's time for one question, if there was a question. All right, look, thank you very much indeed for the time and the energy that you've taken coming along this morning. Thank you. So that brings us to 10 to 11. What I'd propose now is that we take a 15-minute break for morning tea before we get into the substance of the two items that have been the subject of the deputations. So if we take 15 minutes for morning tea, and then we'll deal with the Christchurch wastewater treatment plant recovery update. That's item 7. And then we'll move to item 22, the organics processing options, which I've deliberately brought up the agenda so that those who have made deputations can listen to the staff presentation, to any questions and to the debate and the decision making. So let's now adjourn for 15 minutes. Let's come back at, well, let's say 10 past 11 to move straight into item 7 at that time. So thank you very much. And once again, thank you to everybody that's taken the time and the trouble to come along and speak to us this morning. Thank you. We'll adjourn.